Do that. Okay, and we're ready. Okay, so this week's topic, if this will cooperate. Here we go, is all about ants. And there's a lot more to them than what you may think. There's a lot more to them than I thought. This was one of these programs that I put together, and as I went along, I learned an awful lot of things that I had no idea about. So this is kind of a learning experience for all of us. And I'm going to start with some facts. Ants evolved from stinging wasps billions of years ago. And they are still classified as being in the same family scientifically as stinging wasps. Ants can lift 10 to 50 times their own weight. So they are super, super strong for their size. And they don't have ears. What they do is they feel sounds through vibrations that they pick up in their feet. So they can't hear you walking towards them, but they can feel your footsteps from a fair ways off. When foraging, they leave a pheromone trail so they know where they have been, kind of like a chemical version of dropping breadcrumbs. And they are able to sense those pheromones. And they are omnivores. They eat seeds, they drink nectar, and they also eat other insects, including other ant species, as we will find out a little later on here. A queen ant can live for many years. I think it's up to like 30, right, Christy?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and they can lay up to 1 million eggs during that time. And there are over 12,000 species of ants worldwide. They are on every continent except for Antarctica. Antarctica is the only place where we do not have them.
When the queen dies, the whole colony dies shortly afterwards.
Right. Now, under the title of work, which I think some people are at least a little familiar with this, ants are social insects. They have a societal structure, and each ant has a specific job within the colony. Now, the queens, of course, they only lay eggs. For the most part, all they do. There are a couple that have another job, which again we'll talk about a little later. The males, all they do is lay around and wait to mate with the queen. That's their only function. All of the other ants in a colony are females, and they are workers. And their duties are to feed the larvae, to forage for food, defend the nest, and to take out refuse. So when you see ants all swarmed around a piece of candy that somebody's dropped on the ground, for example, that's all females, and they're all workers. And there are some of what I call homeless insects. There are 200 species of ants known as army ants, not just one species, but 200. And they have 2 life phases, which are termed nomadic and stationary. When they are in the nomadic phase, all they do is travel around attacking other colonies for food, which means eating their food stores, eating their larvae, and in some cases, even attacking and eating the ants themselves. At night, while they're in this phase, they make a temporary home for themselves just for the night, and then they get up and keep traveling the next day. Then finally, they will come to a stationary phase, and that is signaled by the queen beginning to lay eggs wherever they happen to be. And the other ants in the colony use their bodies to form a nest to protect the queen, to protect the unhatched eggs, and also whatever food they happen to have with them. So they stay in place, just doing that, being a nest until the eggs have hatched and are able to carry on some of these activities as well. Now, there was something interesting called fungus parasitism, which basically means it creates zombie ants. There is a species of fungus that infects ants and takes control of their bodies. It finds its way underneath the ant's exoskeleton, and it begins to consume the soft tissue inside. Shortly after it starts doing that, by some unknown mechanism, we don't know if this is something that the ant knows it needs to do, or if it's just a feeling it gets inside or whatever, but it causes the ant to leave the colony. And the ant then finds a nearby leaf, bites it with a death grip, bites it very, very hard, and dies. And then a few days after it dies, that fungus inside the ant escapes and releases spores that are just lying around waiting to infect more ants. And now some ant species have learned to recognize an infected colony mate. And when they find that, they will carry them out of the hive, or out of the nest, excuse me, and far away in order to protect the rest of the colony from getting infected. So something very interesting, and this is one of these things I had no clue about until I read a bit about it. And that's off of a website called pestworld.org. An article called 8 Interesting Facts About Ants That You Need to Read explains all about this. Now we move into a sub-feature of this presentation called ant agriculture. There are 240 species of ants that actually are farmers. And the scientific term for them is attine ants, A-T-T-I-N-E. And what they do is fungus is farmed in their colony tunnel chambers for food. And this is restricted to ants species that are in the Americas and the Caribbean. And it includes the leafcutter ants, which a lot of people know something about. And this is actually termed ant fungus mutualism. These farming habits from these ants typically have a large effect on their surrounding ecosystem. Many species farm large areas surrounding their colonies, so there's a whole lot of tunnels under the ground. And they also, because of their activity, leave walking trails that compress the soil to the point which plants can no longer grow, because it's just the ground is so compacted. You know, it's almost like our our dried clay when we get it from no rain that nothing seems to grow in. The antine colonies commonly have millions of individuals, though there are some species that only house a few hundred that are much smaller in comparison. Antifungus mutualism is actually a symbiosis between certain ant and fungal species, in which the ants actively cultivate fungus, much like we farm crops as a food source. And in turn, the ants are helping the fungal species to thrive. They each depend on each other in these situations for survival. And this type of codependency is prevalent among herbivores who rely on plant material for nutrition. The microbes within the fungus, the microbes' ability to convert the plant material into an actual food source for the ants and accessible to them makes them an ideal partner. And it's only certain types of funguses. And one of the interesting things about this, now we talked early on about how the queens don't do anything but lay eggs. Well, for the ants who are involved in this ant fungus mutualism, until the first generation of a new colony is born and matures, the queen cultivates the fungus herself. Nobody else will do it. When a queen is establishing a new colony, she brings a fungal cultivar from her previous colony or something else we'll talk about in a minute, and lays her eggs around it. Once the eggs mature, she retires from cultivating and continues to lay as many as 20,000 eggs to establish the rest of the colony. And that information comes from a piece on ant fungus mutualism on Wikipedia. And this photo at the right shows an ant cultivating some of this fungus. To go into a little more detail, there is one species that I call insect Amazons, and this is the species M. smithii. And it appears, from what all the research has shown at this point, to only have female members. Males have never been found. The species is found in Mexico and South America. The queens appear to reproduce asexually. All the offspring are actually clones of the queen, from what they can tell in research. And these are known or easily identified, as you can see in this photo here, for the cluster of spikes on their backs. No other ants have that. And they also have somewhat of an enlarged head. And a little more information on the M. smithii, which is, their actual name is Mycosepurus smithii. They are a complex agriculture-based society. The queen, when they begin to start a new colony, the queen sheds its wings and it digs a 4-inch tunnel into the dirt with a main chamber in the bottom. She carries her shed wings down into it and attaches them to the ceiling of the chamber as a fungus growing platform. She moves some of this fungus in that is going to be cultivated, and then she actually feeds the growing fungus the way we would fertilize plants She feeds the growing fungus caterpillar droppings. That's the fertilizer, caterpillar droppings. And then workers also help feed and tend the fungus, which again, they use for their food. And it has been found that this fungus is highly sustainable. It is also efficient to cultivate, and it is disease and pest resistant. So it's ideal from these ants, and there is no comparable fungus in the world outside of this that these agricultural colonies tend to. You can't find this fungus anywhere else. And these ants actually have prehistoric roots. What they call tribe Attine ants, in other words, the agricultural ants, originally evolved in the Amazon rainforest about 60 million years ago. And they are widespread. Actually, they are found as far north as the New Jersey Pine Barrens, which is in the southern part of the state. That's pine, cedar, and oak forest with sandy ground, and as far south as the cold deserts of Argentina. So they're pretty widely spread of these 240 species. Now, to look closer to home, there are 17 ant species in Ohio. The 5 most common are little black ants, pavement ants, odorous house ants, carpenter ants, and red fire ants. And I had to throw in here, just like salamanders and snakes and plant species and everything else we talk about, there always has to be one species that's only found in southern Ohio. It just always seems like it has to be. And this is a photo of the one here, Camponotus chromoides, and it's only found in southern Ohio. And it's noted by the fact that its head and most of its thorax is black. Its antennae are black. Its legs are a kind of a honey brown color, as is part of the abdomen, but the abdomen is mostly striped with this dark black and yellow on it. There's no other ants in Ohio that have an abdomen that has a pattern like that on it. So we're going to go through the top 5 here so you can really see the differences up close. First, the little black ant. Should be obvious why it's called what it is. It's all black. Its shell is very shiny. Legs are black, but they kind of, once you get down to the lower portion and the foot portion, is a kind of a yellowish color. They're very large heads. The pavement ant is also a black, but it's kind of got these lighter colored streaks all the way through its head and its body, if you can see that, almost as if somebody brushed over its body with like a little tiny bit of gray paint or something. And again, they have an extremely large head and very large mandibles as well. And then the odorous house ant, they have, I think, probably of our most common ones, the longest antenna. And they are all black as well, and their legs are more of a sort of a brownish color. And these are the smallest of the most common. And then the carpenter ant, all black, brown legs. Their antennas are pretty much V-shaped, and their head has a very different shape from the other ants that we have seen. They're the closest thing that it reminds me of is their head's kind of shaped like a guitar pick. None of the other ants really have a head shape that's anything like that. And then the red fire ant, true to its name, it's a reddish color. It's much closer to its roots because it actually does have a stinger at the end of its abdomen, and you can see that here in this picture. Also, their back set of legs are longer than their other legs. And they are a, with the exception of that little part of their abdomen there, they are a kind of like a golden red color. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Now, ants come from the family Formicidae, and they are beneficial. They, like some other species we know, like birds and coyotes and foxes and deer, they disperse seeds, and they are pollinators. Not in the way that bees are pollinators, but as they travel around, pollen sticks to their exoskeleton and ends up getting brushed off other places. And they improve soils with all of their tunneling. You will remember from our program that we did on soils and bedrock a long time ago that our soil is actually 50% airspace and water. And a lot of that airspace comes from tunneling insects. And ants are probably one of the biggest ones, along with, in particular, cicadas around the bases of trees. But just in general, ants are probably the biggest one for creating airspace. Again, even just thinking about the Attine ants, their tunnels that they do their agriculture in can spread way, way, way out from the main part of their colony. And also, I was interested to read this. They may be a source for new medicines for high cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure. There are bacteria and chemicals within the bodies of ants that might possibly in the future be used in medications for some of these diseases. They might in the future be specifically farmed as a source of chemicals to go into medicines, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, when I was in Germany, the ants would build a big hill in the forest, and they would tell us to throw a scarf on there, and then you could breathe it, and it would help you if you had a cold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess they put poison on it from the, yeah, and they told us to breathe it, and it really does help you with the cold.
That's very interesting. Yeah, that fits right in with that. Wow. Very cool. So now, unfortunately, like a lot of other things and like insects in general, ants are in decline. Ant populations are in general decreasing by about 1% a year. And it is estimated that they have dropped by 50% in the last 75 years. And the biggest factors contributing to that are disruption of habitat, crush deaths, of course, which you wouldn't think about, but it makes sense. You know, how many ants do you think just walking around you kill in your lifetime? Actual losses of habitat, and then uses in agricultural areas and in suburban and urban areas of insecticides and herbicides. And you know, this is one of those things where something gets affected that is not necessarily meant to. You know, people don't realize, for example, that if they fog their yard for mosquitoes, it's gonna kill more than mosquitoes. And there are certain herbicides that you can use in your lawn that aren't just going to kill weeds. They're going to kill insects also, possibly make birds sick that come in contact. So that is unfortunate, and it obviously is something that should be turned around. And now just throw a little humor in it. If you haven't seen this, if you have any ant pest problems, try assault rifle. Has anybody seen these? I actually, my sister gave all the fathers in the family one of these for Father's Day. And it's a plastic toy rifle. And right here, this little clear thing at the top is a chamber that you fill with table salt. And you cock it, and this thing shoots table salt, and it's to shoot bugs with. So, any questions? And this just happens to be a close-up of a leaf cutter ant that's like, to me, particularly scary. I think we've all seen movies where giant insects invade. And this is the one I really would not want to run into. Any questions on anything? Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing then. Can everybody see me again?
Yep.
And here I have assault rifle.
Well, that's bigger than I thought it would be.
You just cock it, and it's been fun with mosquitoes. Okay, so we have actually 8:32, and Christie has some things for us on this same topic. You ready there, Christie?
Yeah, I wasn't completely ready, but we'll go through it, see how far we get.
Okay.
Okay, hang on, let me just get to my thing. I didn't think you'd be that fast, so.
I didn't either. I'm surprised.
All righty, hang on just a second. Okay. Let me start my video. Sorry about that.
There we go. We see ya.
Okay, so did you give me screen sharing?
I did when we first started.
Oh, I didn't even see. Okay, let's do.
Let me double check, but I did. Yes, you have it.
Okay, let's do a share. All right. We were going to break this into the 2 parts for next week, but I can be ready now because I did it in advance. Well, Dawn has told you a lot about ants and ants in Ohio and stuff. And I was very inspired by his presentation. We always email the presentations to each other early in the week and take a look at it. And been a busy week, but I was very inspired and had to do some more research on this one. And it led me down a few rabbit holes, which was very fun. Let me see why I'm not clicking here. Okay, so I said, want to have a picnic? We're talking about ants here. So Don mentioned there are 17 species of ants in Ohio. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. As of November 2020, there are at least 138 taxa of ants that are listed on iNaturalist in Ohio. A lot of the insects, as well as our birds and mammals, they have surveys. I'm going to start getting involved in Odonata surveys also. I've been involved in the bee surveys, where you take photographs as you go along, you submit them to iNaturalist or to various sites. Just as Dawn and I do with Nest Watch, where we monitor breeding bird boxes and things. So they have found, so far, it's been reported, 138 different kinds of ants in Ohio. Oh, man. Okay, this just, one of these days, I just want to stop. I'm sorry, you guys. I have a glide pad. This is just crazy. I am so sorry. And the glide pad is very jittery. Okay, let's just try this again. Okay. And each of the 17 species Don mentioned may have a subspecies also. And I found this list at iNaturalist.org and its guides and with the taxon, which refers to the Ohio ones. You can just Google Ohio ants and come up with it also. So in the taxonomy in Ohio, there are Dracula ants. There's one of the species of that. The subfamily is Amblyoponidae. I probably won't pronounce the Latin. I had a couple of years of it, but I'll just skip that. They have the odorous ants, Don mentioned, and the odorous ants actually smell like a little bit like gone off coconut, a little bit rotted coconut, they said. The army ants and allies that he talked about, there's one subfamily of that. The Formicine ants, there are 59 different species under that subfamily. The Myrmicine ants, there are 60 under that one. Honorine ants, 5. And there's just the Proceratinae, there are 3 different species under that subfamily. So when Dawn does a presentation like this, I like to Google weird and interesting facts. I love trivia and trivia games, so does my husband, and it's just fun. Some of these Dawn has already mentioned, but I just copied from the site about 100 fun facts about ants. As he mentioned, ants can carry up to 50 times their own weight. Do the math of your own weight. I won't tell, but it's a lot of weight. And there are, as he said, a whopping 12,000 species of ants on our planet. Ants have a larger muscle to body ratio than humans, and hence they can carry 50 times their own weight. If you added the mass of all the humans in the world and all the ants in the world, they would be approximately equal. And I would have thought ants were even more. There are a lot of ants around there. Don talked about the farming and the nurseries a bit. Ants often carry other insects from plant to plant. They're not doing this to like only, well, they do enslave the other insects too, but they want the insect's nectar. Ants are enslavers, as he mentioned. They will kidnap ants from other colonies and force them to do their work. So it's not only the aphids, but they will kidnap other ants also. I've even read about them kidnapping the eggs to raise them as their own, even from different species. or the same species in a different colony. It is believed that ants have existed on our planet for 130 million years. And when you think about that, they survived ice ages also. So we talk about ants being stronger than dinosaurs and other things too. There is a species of ant named after Harrison Ford. It's called the Phydola Harrison Fordi, which is the perks of him being an environmentalist. I don't think he actually discovered it, but maybe he researched. I don't know how that came about. Ants are the world's first farmers. They have had agriculture longer than human beings, 130 million years. We talked about queens and their mating and some odd things about that. When the queens mate, their wings fall off. The world's largest ant that we have is the bullet ant, and that is found in the Panama jungle. And I think other places in South America and Central America also. They can grow up to 1.6 inches. Can you imagine that? An ant, 1.6 inches, okay? We're gonna talk about the bullet ant more in a second too. So as I said, ants have already survived the ice age, more resilient than dinosaurs even, because they've survived meteor impacts and everything else. Prehistoric ant was discovered that had a wingspan of 6 inches. That is the biggest ant that has ever existed that we know of so far. In tropical regions, ants make up 25% of the mass of all fauna. So all the living animal mass, 25% are just ants. The average black garden ant has a lifespan of 15 years. And remember, we said the queens can live up to 3 decades. The correct collective noun for a group of ants is a swarm of ants, which is interesting considering Dawn talking about how they came from stinging wasps. Ants can kill. The Australian bulldog ant is officially the world's most dangerous ant and has caused 3 deaths since the 1930s. Some ant nests can go as deep as 2 feet underground. Fire ant colonies in the Amazon rainforest link their legs together and create a raft. Now, I've seen this on Discovery Channel or Nat Geo or something, and they have like a flotilla. They link together and float down the rivers en masse, and they sometimes can travel through the forest that way. It's like a mat of ants. Talked about queen ants living 3 decades, longer than any other insect. Most painful sting of any insect is the bullet ant. It has a venomous sting and can last up to 24 hours of pain. And it has been compared to putting your finger in a 240 volt socket. Not our 120 here, but the 240 that they have in Europe and stuff. So some Native American tribes, and this is referring to Central and South America, they practice initiation rituals in which they force young men to be bitten consecutively by those bullet ants. So 240 volt shock. And as I mentioned, when Dawn was talking, when the queen dies, the rest of the colony will die within a few months. This was interesting. Ants have no lungs. They have tiny holes from which oxygen enters and carbon dioxide leaves. Because they don't have lungs, they can survive a whole day underwater. Hence those rafts that I talked about, the ones on the bottom and linked together, it doesn't matter. They don't have lungs to fill with water. Ants hear through vibrations. They don't have ears. And that's what Dawn said about like footsteps and things. They know their dangers and know when to scurry. I talked about the odorous house ant, like rotten coconuts. An ant the size of a human could run as fast as a racehorse. Ants have 2 stomachs. One is for their own food and one is to feed others, which is interesting. Ant eggs survive by consuming the queen ant's saliva. That's pretty gross. This was interesting. There are 1 million ants for every human on our planet. They are officially the world's smartest insects and have a whopping 250,000 brain cells. When I looked into that, that's what led me down a rabbit warren. And I'm going to go into that more in just a second. Army ants don't live in nests, as Don said. They're always on the move, and they do gather the time for the egg laying and the breeding. But those army ants are primarily found in Central and South America in the largest numbers. The queen ant does not have blue blood. As a matter of fact, ant blood is completely colorless. You probably know, because I'm sure everybody here has smashed an ant unless you're Buddhist. The world's largest ant colony is actually in California, Southern California, and it spans 600 miles, one colony. That's incredible. Never rains in Southern California, but they have a lot of ants. This I thought was kind of fun. The average fire ant sleeps around 9 hours a day. And I think that I read, we actually have 3 species of fire ants in Ohio. And I saw a map of where the colonies are. And if you've ever traveled to Florida, that's a real problem there. And I've had fire ant attacks, and it is not pleasant. If an ant egg is fertilized, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get that. Oh my goodness. If an egg is fertilized, a female ant develops. If an egg is left unfertilized, it's a male ant that hatches, which I thought was really odd. The world's smallest ant is the pharaoh ant, which is 2 millimeters long, tiny little thing compared to 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Even though Hawaii is a detached island, it still has ants. There are currently 50 species of ants crawling around the island, and none of them are native. The bite of a bulldog ant can kill a human in 15 minutes.
Ooh.
Ants do not have noses, they smell with their antennae. Each ant colony, oh my goodness, I'm really having a bad time. Each ant colony has its own special scent, and they can smell intruders coming also because they know that they're not from around here. Birds love black ants. They put them in their feathers because the ants secrete formic acid, which hence their name of their Latin name. And the formic acid eliminates parasites. The only thing about that is I was doing some bird nest boxes this week, and I had some deceased tree swallows at Glacier Ridge. I think from the heat, it was pretty sad, and they were pretty old. Those boxes were absolutely full of ants, and they were, as soon as I opened up to try to clean them out, they got all over me. And I had wondered if between that and the bird mites that contributed to the demise, or maybe they did move in afterwards. But I was kind of surprised about birds picking up ants and putting them in their feathers. So this is a weird one. Carpenter ants can self-destruct to save others. There's a gland in their body that sprays toxic liquid, and they contract their body, which ruptures that gland. And they throw that liquid at their enemies, which may be other ants even that it's toxic for. When an ant dies, it releases a chemical that communicates to the other ants to move it to their burial ground. And everybody's seen that. I'm sure you squash an ant and a bunch of them come in and carry it off. East African indigenous tribes use ants in medicine. They get the ant to produce 2 bites on either side of a cut to help it heal. The power of the ant's jaw creates a seal for that cut. Driver ants are very scary. They're predators, and as predators, they work in mass groups to consume everything in their paths. And I've heard this before. They have been known to consume tethered horses and even human infants. Termites are not ants. Termites are actually more closely related to cockroaches than to ants. Ants are able to navigate using Earth's magnetic field. And each year, ants move approximately 50 tons of soil per square mile. So that line about how intelligent ants are, I had to look that up because I like to challenge things to say, is that just another one of those fake memes, or is that really true? And I always thought that the smartest insects were bees. Honeybees are, and other bees are social animals, and they're absolutely brilliant. And the dance that they do and showing the directions to the flowers. And I don't think we know enough in research yet to really declare that ants are the most intelligent, but I found a great site which is called schoolofbugs.com. And there's this great guy, and I just quoted his pages directly pretty much about this. So he said it's difficult to answer about what insects are the most intelligent, but he said, depends on how you define it, intelligence or smartness. The notion of intelligence, we've always kind of gone along with, it starts with brain size and brain function, and compared to human brains, because we have one of the largest brains for our size. But insects do not have the same kind of brain that we do. They don't need that kind of organ to survive. Insects have a neural network distributed over a wide area of their bodies, and it's not concentrated in the head, the cranial area. The other thing is ants, why they consider them so intelligent also, is that they work as a team. Basically, each individual ant functions as one neuron. They function as a group together, each have their jobs. With ants, there really are, there's no director. The queen does not somehow convey orders saying, hey, hey, Anna, over here, I want you to go to this place and look for food, go look for sugar, or find fat over here, Susan, because they're all girls. So, but they all have a job to do, and they just go and do their jobs. But they just go ahead and go about their work. So, oh my goodness. You guys, I am so sorry. This is really dysfunctional today. I'm gonna have to start hooking up my mouse to do this. So they don't have a large brain like we do. They don't need that to survive. But how do they show intelligent behavior? So you divide it into instinct, which is based on evolution, hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Actions that require thoughtfulness, cohesive group behavior, as I was mentioning, or does an insect actively demonstrate that they are thinking and they take a decision based on that thinking process before they do an action? And these researchers say, well, this thoughtfulness can take multiple forms. It can be about learning from adverse outcomes. So if there's a threat, don't do that again. So where an insect has had a bad experience in a certain situation, they can be cautious for a while if that same situation happens to them again. There's that memory of that. Another possibility is when an insect makes a decision, or it's seeming to make a decision, as opposed to taking the same option every time based on instinct. So instinct will say, okay, you're going to turn right, turn right, turn right, and you'll find sugar there, or you think it's going to be over there. And even if there's a threat, they still go the same way every time, as opposed to, I won't go that way anymore. And they talk about other instances of intelligence can be smart defense mechanisms, trying to co-opt other insects or denizens to protect themselves from a predator, as with some butterflies too, which and I've looked that up too, which butterflies know how to protect themselves from predators. This is just really crazy today. So one of the proofs of intelligence could be architecture. Ants have complex tunnels and systems. Some insects demonstrate intelligence in how they look for food, beyond foraging, and Dawn really explained those farmer ants before. Many insects have ways of communicating or speaking using a symbolic language or abstract behavior. And we've talked about pheromones, that Dawn mentioned that also. Bees do their dance, they have ways of speaking. The dance behavior, like I said, is correlated with a subtle higher functioning of the brain. So bee intelligence, like I said, I always thought bees were the most intelligent insect. The average honeybee may only seem smart to humans because they always know where the flowers are, and they know how to run that hive with efficiency and teamwork. But there is a lot more to bees than just functioning of the hive, finding the flowers. They create their own language. I think we've talked about that here before through that waggle dance. And they tell each other the directions, where the food is and how to get there. And they think even that waggling has something to, the speed has something to do with how far they have to fly or how long. Everybody in the hive knows that dance, and they communicate the message to any bee that needs to know in that hive. The honey makers also have a knack for finding the shortest route to find untouched flowers, which will yield absolutely the most for them to bring back to their hive. So it takes serious work to fly from the hive, gather as much pollen as possible, and then keep your eye out for other possible flowers. Bees, including bumblebees, will take the shortest route from the hive to the flower, rather than going flower to flower near the hive. They take different routes because they avoid predictable behavior, which could attract predators. So that's what they're saying. The honeybee has an ability to plan and to think through how far and where to get pollen next. They said this is a very forward-thinking insect and definitely smart. Bumblebees also demonstrate other smart behaviors, such as efforts to keep their beehive at a constant temperature, which is interesting. So ant intelligence, like bees, ants can be considered intelligent based on the fact they cohabit in the social community. That takes skills, understanding. Solitary insects don't have this kind of skills, and they don't function as a community. And like I said, the individual neurons functioning as one brain. One of the best pieces of evidence comes from the way they line up their food. They regularly hoard food to save food for rainy days, but the forays go much further than gathering. It extends into agriculture and herding, which we've talked about before. Farmer ants farm that type of fungus the colony can eat, which Don mentioned. They also herd aphids. I've touched on that. The same way cowhands herd cattle. They don't eat the aphids, but the excretion from the aphids constitutes food the ants that herd them. So the honeydew we've talked about. Leaf cutter ants is another group that farm. I think Don touched on that. They dissect leaves and carry them back to their ant hills, which I have observed them doing that. The leaves are then chewed up and mixed with saliva that creates that fungus that can be used to feed the colony. And then the aligned group of ants that farm mushrooms also. They grow the mushrooms underground, like Don explained. So the next group also that are considered very intelligent are cockroaches. They are solitary, though. They don't live in hives, fortunately, even though you've seen the horrible pictures and things of that happening, but they are solitary. They don't have mass communications like the bees and the ants do, or some of these other behaviors I've talked about, like the dance that tags them as being smart. But they do show they have higher brain function. The biggest thing that this one argued about how cockroaches are intelligent is they pick out multiple entry and exit routes. So in case they're threatened or the light comes on or whatever, they have multiple ways to get out if one way is blocked. They actually plan those out. They plan out multiple exit routes. And that surveillance and planning is pretty much beyond most animals and possibly even some humans, but it's a clear sign supposedly of intelligence. Roaches have been known to salivate or drool in response to certain stimuli, such as smells that drift into their orbit. That's pretty disgusting, and I actually might have nightmares about that tonight, about drooling cockroaches. So researchers have posited that if cockroaches could be made to react in this one way to stimuli, they could possibly be taught other learned behavior. So I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that there are scientists teaching cockroaches learned behavior, unless it's suicide or something like that. But they say that cockroaches can survive nuclear war, and but I just that's why I could not live in the South, because they gross me out so much. So one time I was working in a candy store in Georgetown when I was going to school in DC, and they have, I guess, a lot of the basements in Georgetown, all the shops, like I lived on or worked on near Wisconsin and M Street, if you know DC at all, and a couple of couple of places up. And I had always heard that the basements under, like most of those places, it's like one long basement. All those stores are connected. And apparently, because DC was built on a drained swamp, it's pretty disgusting with cockroaches and a pretty mild climate there. And one night I was working on, I don't know why the owners wanted a candy store open until 2 o'clock in the morning, but that was the 70s and disco days. A cockroach came out of a crack in the floor when I was sitting. I had sandals on, and I swear it's about the size of a mouse, maybe palmetto bug, whatever. It was so disgusting. I quit my job and he moved me over to the ice cream shop part of it, and where there were a lot more people. But I also think that at that point, he also did not keep the candy store open until 2 o'clock in the morning. I think he wanted people to get hungry when the bars let out, but there was everybody in there, and I was just terrified. So we're a little college student here. Don't like them. Okay.
Cockroaches carry diseases.
Yes, they do, as lots do. Yeah. I just, nightmares. And on the same note, when I was working with this, I will have to tell you, the night that I wrote this, I woke up twice during the night, and I don't know if this is real or not, if I was just dreaming, but at 1:30 in the morning, I woke up that night and I felt like itching on my arm, and I put my phone light over in my arm, and there was a brown marmorated stink bug on my arm in bed, my husband next to me. I didn't want to wake him up, and I grabbed it and I threw it across where his armoire is in the room. So I haven't found that. Hopefully the cat has. I don't know if that was real. And then an hour and a half after that, I woke up again. My arm was itching, and I shone my light on it, and there was a brownish red spider with like a large round abdomen. I haven't identified yet. And I'm pretty terrified about most spiders except jumping spiders, and harvestmen I don't mind either. Like this guy behind me was pretty cool this week, but I just don't know what to think. I didn't want to hurt it because I usually let them outside, but I can't stand them. So now I'm pretty much afraid to sleep in my bed. And I still think I might have been dreaming because I was processing images like this one. I went to a fen on Rutherford Fen on Monday with a friend near Springfield, and I took lots of insect photos. But anyway, I gotta wrap this up. But I still think I was probably dreaming, but that's just a nasty dream. So you will have to know that I sacrificed my sleep for this slideshow. Beetles. This was one thing I didn't know. Beetles account for 40%, nearly 40% of insects found on Earth, 25% of all life forms. They have about 400,000 species of beetles in this world. Some people say there could be as high as 100 million species. Beetles, by definition, have the tough exterior, and they do not live in large communities, and they are very skilled at surviving on their own. That's what they said. Again, not having that community group life, maybe they aren't as intelligent as we think, but being loners like that makes them have to think in new ways to achieve their goals. Hallmark of smartness. Finding their food, avoiding predators. So beetles do have their own language. They can speak through different means. Stridulation, they communicate by rubbing their mouth parts or other body parts together or on the ground. Another means of communication is through the use of pheromones, which many insects use. The beetles use this to find mates or deter predators. Some use bioluminescence to deter predators. Ladybug beetles scout out the kinds of plants that aphids, which is their food, would like. So the ladybugs hang around the plants that they know the aphids might like, and they just hang out waiting for aphids until the aphid descends on the plant, then they have their meal. The other element that points to a smartness of beetles, their flexibility, is their prevalence in every known habitat pretty much on Earth. They can live anywhere and do. The number of obstacles, environments, and predators they face is almost unimaginable, and they continue to survive and thrive, which they're doing something right to do that. Butterflies. So let's get away from some of the grossness, although this is very interesting to me. I love butterflies, and I'm photographing them more and more, and just they're amazing. So And they're not just pretty insects which flip from flower to flower all day. And they know which flowers are more abundant than others in a certain area. They just figure out where to go in their short lives. There's still a lot of studies on insects, including butterflies, but the butterfly is able to remember which color flowers have the most nectar available for them to feed on. This is called trap lining, is the behavior butterflies display to remember routes to various sources of nectar. Okay, this is a good one. Butterflies don't communicate like honeybees, but they do still talk to each other. Butterflies mostly only communicate with each other to mate using pheromones like the beetles. But some butterflies will even produce sounds, which I didn't know other than a wing sound. But the sounds are directed toward other insects, like ants, that are known to protect butterflies against predators. So they have learned to make sounds to communicate with ants, to attract the ants, because ants are beneficial to the butterflies that protect them. And that's what I just said. Let me repeat this. Butterflies talk to ants. So think about that one for a minute. That's pretty crazy. Grasshoppers. I never really thought of grasshoppers as being very intelligent. I used to hold my brothers down and catch grasshoppers and squeeze them and put them all over my little brothers. So they pretty much hate me. Grasshoppers mostly eat vegetation. They're not picky eaters. Greenery is all over the place, easy to come by. And so you got to look elsewhere because they eat green stuff, big deal. They don't have to really, track down the right color flower or the right kind of prey. But they said that grasshoppers can release chemicals to hide from predators, which I'd never heard that before. Yeah. I know that some insects and ants have the formic acid, which make them distasteful to many predators, but the grasshoppers can change that. They can release these chemicals. Like, you come near me, you bite me, I'll release this chemical. You won't like what you taste here, and they'll go away. Some grasshoppers actually excrete toxic material, and some somehow mimic toxicity. Maybe it's the smell of the toxic chemical that, say, birds are used to, and they'll leave them alone. So this is kind of odd. When food sources are low, some grasshoppers will become locusts. They'll change color from green to yellow and black, and they team up with other solitary grasshoppers, and they start swarming, as you hear, on the crops. So they come together to find food, but they will occasionally eat each other during those swarms. These grasshoppers turned locusts are called gregarious locusts by virtue of their turn from solitary to group insects. That's pretty terrifying, actually, and for farmers. Grasshoppers will eat each other if the population has grown too high. The first eaten are the ones that aren't able to keep up. Flies. So flies are very annoying, and they bite and they buzz and they're filthy and they carry disease. But they said if you look beyond first impressions, they might know what they're doing. Flies have the capacity to think about their decisions before they make them. They let the information soak in using a sulfoxP gene to make decisions. Humans have 4 of the FOXP genes, which are believed to control the connection between neurons. And so intelligence researchers say this is a sign, because flies have a copy of this gene, that they have the ability to move from automatic impulse to reasoned thinking. So think about that in your nightmares tonight, that flies have reasoned thinking. Flies are also able to feel fear, which makes me a little happy at times. As a naturalist, I should not say these things, but fear me, fly. And I can tell you that every fly that enters my house should be afraid of my kitten, because Loki is the best fly hunter I've ever seen. He'll jump in the air and use both paws to go and capture the flies and bring it down. It's very funny. But that's what they said about flies. Feeling fear could be considered instinctual, but emotions are a strong tool used to aid survival, not only in flies, but humans as well. Once scared from a food source, the fly will remember that traumatic experience and will take longer to return, which probably is why it's so hard to catch them, because you're threatening them, you're shooing them away from your picnic or whatever, and then you can't catch them to smash them or anything after that. So, and this was bolded like this in this article. If flies can feel fear, what other emotions are they capable of feeling? So I thought that was pretty funny. Praying mantises, I actually saw a native praying mantis this week, which was really cool. I watched it trying to catch a ladybug, which was very interesting. Well-known praying mantises have outstanding vision because of the way they swivel their heads, those wide-set eyes. In further research, scientists found that the two large forward-looking eyes create a 3D depth perception. Allows them to identify the distance of objects and living things, and may actually create the capability that they can recognize familiar objects and even faces. They actually had heard that before, that praying mantises or manti can recognize people. Well, then, go ahead, Carolyn.
No, I just laughed. That was
I
funny.
know this is crazy stuff. This is why I had so much fun doing this, going down this rabbit hole, and this is almost done. While the number of neurons in their brains are woefully inadequate for praying mantises to become intelligent, there are many reports that they're able to detect differences between living objects, recognize different types of food sources and predators, and even pet owners. Okay, termites. I think this is the last one. Termites, 200 million years ago, before our ants and bees, were exhibiting group behavior in community living. They started farming fungus similar or significantly for other insects. Their group behavior patterns are also varied and extraordinary. Termites have a history of not only living in tough environments all over the world, but actually making the environments habitable through the way they aerate the soil and the environment changes they make. Termites and colonies live in symbiosis. They feed each other through their mouth or anus. So that'll also be in my dreams tonight, I am sure. They're very adaptable how they feed each other. One outstanding example is with soldier termites, whose mouths gape so big due to their jaw structure, they cannot feed themselves. They have to rely on others in the colony to feed them, which is seems like evolutionary. There was a mistake there somehow. I don't know how it developed that way. Possibly it's because they needed the community, or it's that collective brain cell thing, but I don't know how evolution would have let them develop like that. So their existence depending on eating, and they can't eat because their jaws are too big, but then they have to work as a colony. It's baffling. So this is a picture of a bullet ant that we've talked about, which is pretty terrifying. And they said that is the most painful insect sting. So we're just gonna have to go away from this and not dream about this tonight. So it is the world's largest ant, possesses a powerful venomous sting. The worker ant can be over 2.5 centimeters long. And it looks like a wingless wasp. The queen ant is about the same size. They have reddish brown hair, and they're hairier than other related ants. Bullet ants are most likely to be found in Central and South America. And the bullet ant, as we talked about, gets its name from the shot of intense pain that it delivers. The venom-filled sting can produce agonizing effects in the recipient for up to 24 hours. And the Schmidt sting pain index, which people are probably familiar with, and this gives a guy named Schmidt collected different insects to sting him. And it was Schmidt that developed the index saying, well, that hurts. Well, that really hurts. Well, that hurts more, or that was nothing. So he developed the insect by volunteering to tolerate being stung by all kinds of critters. But he rated the bullet ant as a 4, the highest level of pain. It ranks higher than the harvester ant, paper wasp, and even the tarantula hawk wasp. Now those tarantula hawk wasps, they're all over Arizona. They're probably in desert areas. And my daughter was walking her dog. She lived outside of Phoenix for a while. And one night she saw that when she first moved there and took a picture of it and said, what is that? And then I guess before I found out, a neighbor told her it was a tarantula hawk wasp. And you should look that up if you want real nightmares too. These things are huge and ugly. They aren't that interested in humans, but apparently that's one of the worst stings that you can get. And visiting her one time during tarantula hawk wasp season, we saw those, and they were just unbelievably scary looking. So that's something to look up. And I think that is the end of my slides. It is. I will stop my sharing here.
That was very interesting.
Glad I had that ready.
Yeah, me too.
So let me go back to the screen. There we go. I don't know where I disappeared. Yeah, there I'm kind of fading in and out, you guys. So instead you have the harvest man eating an insect there. I don't know why I keep, maybe because it got darker here or something. Yeah, hello. Anyway, so just to wrap up too, I went to Buck Creek State Park and Rutherford Fen near Springfield. Plus, I visited the oldest tree in Clark County, which is near Rutherford Fen, and hiked all around there with a friend. We went hunting for dragons, as we said, odonatas, so dragonflies and damselflies, and took a lot of cool pictures, but saw a lot of cool insects and a lot of insects eating other insects like this. And we were gone from 7:30 in the morning or 7:15 in the morning until about 7:30 at night. It was a long day with lots and lots of hiking and lots of wetlands. And here's a photography tip. If you ever want to photograph dragonflies, I think it was Jim McCormick that told her this tip, is that if you stand in the water, they don't know what you are. Like if you're on the bank, the odonatas are a little bit scared, see your shadow, and they don't cooperate. But if you're actually standing in the water, they go about their business all around you. And that really worked. So we had brought our boots. We trudged 2 miles out to this marshy area at Buck Creek with really bad directions. And she said, you know, if I walked all the way in these boots, my muck boots, I'm going to get in the water. And so I got into, and we found they were laying eggs all around us, dipping in, they were mating around us, and they were landing right by us. And we got great pictures of the dragonflies and damselflies because we were in the water with them, which is a very, very crazy thing. Anyway, I'm done, and I hope you guys don't have too many nightmares.
Yeah,
If you want nightmares, if you want nightmares, turn your compost.
Yeah.
Oh yes, done that.
Oh, I can't believe what's in compost.
Yeah, it's something else.
Yeah.
Well, it's about 9:15, so time for us to wrap up. I hope everybody liked this one, and not sure what we'll have for you next week, but I'm sure it'll be something equally as good.
We might do insects a little bit more. Elizabeth had talked about talking more about beneficial insects.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, Don and I will probably talk afterwards because he comes up with these great ideas and I get really inspired by what he's done. And so we'll hash it out and figure out next week. But thanks for being patient because I was going to do this next week as part 2 if Don ran on, but I crammed it in anyway. Glad I had it ready.